7 seasons, 112 players, 18 All-Stars. If I'm being honest, I think Survivor All-Stars gets a bad rap. It's not like the most decorated season, and its ending is somewhat unsatisfying, but besides that, it's a pretty decent season. It's not my favorite. I mean, I still hold Outback, Marquesas, and Pearl Islands, and even Africa over it, but considering that returning player seasons are often not my favorite seasons, it was surprisingly enjoyable, and the cast live up to its name. Even the people who weren't necessarily star players had some justification for being back. Now this is a hefty cast. It's the first one with 18 players, as I mentioned, so for timing purposes, I've split this video into 3 parts. In this part, I'll cover the 6 returning players from the original Mogo Mogo tribe, as they placed worst in this season. Now, Jenna wasn't supposed to be in last place for this tribe, but at the last minute, I made a change to my ranking. I was pretty critical of Jenna's gameplay and status as a winner in my rankings of Survivor Amazon, but this time around, she didn't even really get the chance to play at all. She was sort of under-edited to begin with, and the only strategic moves I saw her make, if you could even call them that strategic, were somewhat aligning with Kathy and Sheehan. Well, her game took a tragic turn in only the 3rd episode, leaving her to become the 2nd player ever to quit the game. See, in the Amazon, it was revealed in the episode where they were rewarded with letters from home that Jenna's mother was sick with cancer, but that she seemed to be recovering. Well, in the time between that and All-Stars, her health must have gotten worse again, and for the 9 days that Jenna was on the island, she's facing a mental battle with herself, worried that she would be away when her mother passed. Before the 3rd immunity challenge began, she called it quits in front of everyone and said goodbye, and sadly her mother did pass away, but at least Jenna was by her side when she did. So I was gonna put Hatch at 6 initially, but then I took another look at his gameplay, and I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that Richard played the best game out of any of the other winners on the season, besides the fact that he did not make it as far as they did. It was never clear that he would be the first one to go whenever Mogo Mogo lost their first immunity challenge, but the fact that he immediately resumed his identity as the food provider for his tribe somewhat secured him. Well, in the 5th episode, Saboga, which wasn't looking very good at all, dissolved, sending Rupert and Jenna to Shapira and Ethan and Jerry to Mogo Mogo. I will explain this more in I think the 2nd part of this series. Well, after the first 2 tribe immunity challenge ended with the Shapira win, it was looking like Ethan's head was on the chopping block, but Lex and Colby were having none of this. They campaigned to get Richard out instead and seemed to have the numbers, but Rich caught on and started a counter movement, and Richard did have some traction. He had some favor with Jan and Kathy, so it seemed like he actually had a fighting chance to stay, but alas, he was bamboozled. Now, I neglected to mention that Richard's stay on All-Star was shrouded with controversy over an incident between him and Sue Hawk during the final 14 immunity challenge, but I'll go over that in part 3. He went from America's golden boy to America's unfortunately chafed cowboy within 6 seasons. How did that happen? Well, it was pretty awesome to see him working with the likes of Lex and Kathy. I mean, it's an early classic Survivor fan's dream to see that happen, and once Saboga dissolved, Ethan joined the fun. But it was plain to see that Colby just didn't have the same effect on his tribe mates as he did back at Ogakor Beach. He didn't mesh well with Sheehan, but who really does? And Lex later on, Ethan's presence siphoned Colby's impact as an alpha male, as he was now among many other comp beasts. Then when Jerry joined Mogo Mogo, he was reunited with an old enemy, someone who he backstabbed last time he played, so he just didn't really seem to have the same likelihood of success as he did in Season 2. Then when Mogo Mogo lost their millionth immunity, it was looking like Jerry was next up to go, but then a light bulb illuminated in Lex's head. Lex went to Jerry and filled her in on his plan to blindside Colby, and they got enough people willing to flip, and Colby was one surprised cowboy and one surprised castaway that night at Tribal. Everyone agrees that Sheehan was totally robbed in Thailand. One of the only redeemable Sukjais, she never got along with her tribe, so she jumped at the opportunity to game with the remaining Chuegons, and yeah, we all know how that went down. Once again, she was sort of a fish out of water on her tribe, and the only person she really gelled with was Kathy. Making up for her unimpressive run in Season 5, she made it to the merge, and once Kathy was booted at the final 8, she became the next person on the chopping block, and at this point she really started butt heads with the remaining players, especially Jenna Lewis, and she very luckily won immunity at the final 7. It's kind of funny to see this win light a fire in her as she begins to almost get the cockiness of a potential winner. At this point, she was the only Mogo Mogo left, so she was basically guaranteed to go next if she didn't win again, which she didn't, and so she went. I'm just happy she made it all the way to the final 6 because she really is a good player. Sadly, as she was a victim to yet another pagonging, I don't think there was any way she could have made it through to the final 5. She would have to win out. She'd probably have, yeah, she or else that her only other hope would be to make a deal with Tom and hope that the other two duos all vote for different people, which is highly unlikely. The robbed queen of the Marquesas, she came back with a vengeance, and I'll admit she didn't shake up her game too much, but she still did a pretty good job. She used her identity as a swing vote amongst the other Mogo Mogos to her advantages. She had ties with both Sheann's circle of people and Lex's, and she even seemed to bond with the other Shaperas at the one day long yacht reward. She even won the first merge immunity challenge alongside Boston Rob. Yes, it was a two-person immunity. Yet after that, luck finally ran out as Shapera was obviously pagonging the remaining Mogo Mogos, and Kathy was the second casualty. Lex was without a doubt the best player on the tribe, and he had the potential to be one of the best players of the season. It seemed like Lex had some control over every single Mogo Mogo vote, and once Ethan and Jerry joined them from Saboga, he used them as more numbers. Whenever Lex decided he wanted someone else to go, he had the power to change that. I mean, look at Rich and Colby. And why did he do all of this? Well, because back in Africa, he had the numbers practically the entire season. You never needed to pull flashy moves to get someone unexpected out. The boot order was somewhat predictable. There was a clear pecking order, but this time around, he didn't have that luxury. And if there was someone who was going to be a threat to their game, he needed to cut them as soon as possible. Because of all this, he was depicted as a huge power player, and it was looking like it was going to be a showdown between him and Boston Rob at the merge. Until the fake merge. That's right, Probst had another fake merge, except unlike in Thailand, it wasn't even a merge at all. He had the remaining players drop their buffs and draw new ones, and what ended up happening was the new tribes just switched tribes, except Amber, who stayed on Shapira. This left her isolated from her whole tribe, and because that basically guaranteed her to go home if Shapira loses immunity. Confusing, right? Well, then Shapira does just that, but Boston Rob wasn't just about to watch his ambush slip through his fingers. Before the tribes headed back to camp, Rob takes Lex aside and promises to return the favor if Lex keeps Amber safe. Lex agreed and instead pulls the strings to get Jerry out. Wow. Which is very surprising because it looked like him and her were working together, as she always was one of the first people he would tell on who to vote for. Anyways, in the next episode, it's finally time to merge for real, and Rob pretends like he never made such a deal, claiming that he only promised to keep Lex safe if he could, which he could not. And this whole scene is just kind of funny, just the way he explains to Lex, this is gonna incoming really bad impression. I promised I would save you if I could. I'm sorry, I cannot. That's how he said it, and it's so cringe. It's just so incredibly cringe. It is sad because, you know, one of the best players of that season, who could have easily won the entire thing, was robbed by Rob on a break of one's word. That being said, he should have just voted Amber out. It probably would have made no difference, but it would have given Lex one more number going into the merge. You know, he would have had, he would have had Jerry, and I probably could make a whole video, like, just doing the math on, like, how the season would have played different if he just did not take Rob's word. Be on the lookout for the next part of this video where I rank the 6 original All-Stars from the Saboga tribe.